Hi, welcome back to the library. Some people were saying this is the first time they've been anywhere in 2 years. And Karen, is this, we haven't had many in person?
The third live program.
It's the third live program. Okay, so we're getting back to regular life, maybe, for a little while. Anyway, I haven't really prepared a talk. I put together a lot of slides. I know people are interested in electric cars. I think there's a lot of questions, a lot of maybe skepticism, certainly a lot of curiosity. I know that wherever I go, people look at the car and they say, what the heck is that? The car from the future. Well, I am the man from the future, and I have come back to tell you, your next car is electric. You may not believe it yet, but sooner or later, you're going to get an electric car because that's what they're all going to be. Maybe not in 10 years, but before too long. And I know that not everybody is running out to buy a new car. And I know that there are not many used electric cars on the market yet. Although if you look for used Teslas, they are becoming more available because Tesla's been around for about 10 years. You can find used Teslas, but just about every auto manufacturer is coming out with electric vehicles. They're becoming more capable. They're becoming more affordable. We're seeing a broad range now of offerings. Some of them are under $30,000. The Porsche is about $150,000 or $180,000 if you're in that market. Anyway, it's a broad range of availability. There's a broad range of vehicle types. We're going to see more like SUVs. We're seeing electric pickup trucks. We're seeing compact electric cars. There's all kinds of cars coming at all kinds of price points. And before long, you actually won't be able to buy a gasoline car at all. So I know that people have a lot of questions and curiosity and perhaps skepticism. I think a lot of that really just comes from unfamiliarity. So I hear pretty much the same questions all the time. How far can it go? How long does it take to charge? Where can you charge it? Stuff like that. So these are the questions that I hope to answer in our little talk today. This is really, as Karen indicated, it's two talks together. I want to talk about electric vehicles. The sugar coating for that is I took my car to California, not to prove to you that it can be done, but because I was confident that it could be done. And in fact, we did it with, I won't say no problems at all, but so few problems that, I mean, it was no more problematic than driving a gasoline car would have been. Okay? So, how does this work? Let me see. It works like that. That's us. That's the car. It's a Volkswagen Id4. I'm not here to advertise for Volkswagen, but this is a very good car. It was the right choice for me. As I indicated, there's a lot of choices out there, but I like this car. It's roomy inside. It's smooth. It's powerful. It's fast. It's a lot of fun to drive this car. One big difference that anybody would notice right away between a gasoline car and an electric car is that electric cars have what's called instant torque, which means you can take off from a stop sign like a jackrabbit. I mean, it's almost boring, actually, the way people talk about electric car acceleration as head snapping. I don't care. I don't really care that it has head snapping acceleration, but Volkswagen markets this car not against other electrics, but against the Toyota RAV4 or the Honda CR-V, things like that. This car will leave them in the dust. 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds or whatever, and people complain that that's not as fast as the Tesla. Well, it's plenty fast enough for me. This is a great car. We had a good time. And on the odometer, you can see this is the day we started on our trip to California. It's just over 10,000 miles. We will put 10,000 miles on the car in the course of 2 months, and I'm going to take you on that trip with me. This is the route. We started in Cape Cod. We had friends and family down the East Coast, so New York State, we visited a couple of people. My mother is in North Carolina, we stopped there. I have a sister in Atlanta, Georgia, actually Gainesville, Georgia. So we went down the East Coast to Atlanta area, and then we turned right and spent days in territory where we knew nobody, places we had never been. We had never been to Arkansas. We had never been to Texas. So that was the fun. I mean, people ask, why did you do this? Well, my wife's sister lives in California. We usually visit her in the winter, February. We were a little wary about getting on an airplane and going to California. We had the time, so we said, let's just drive. I should throw into this, part of the history of Volkswagen, you may be familiar, a few years back, they did some terrible things as far as the diesel emissions and things like that were concerned. So they reached a huge settlement with the Department of Justice that had two parts. For one, it compelled them to focus on the development of electric vehicles, and two, focus on the development of the electric charging network. So it's my understanding Volkswagen invested $2 billion in a company called Electrify America. I don't know if it has any other shareholders. I think it's just Volkswagen, actually. And they put $2 billion of capital investment into Electrify America. And as part of my purchase a year ago, I got 3 years of free charging on the Electrify America network. So, fuel cost, I think we spent $7 on electricity between here and California because we are personally benefiting from Volkswagen sins, essentially, right? In the Dieselgate scandal. So, that's our route. Many people have asked, how did you choose the route? Well, this is the Electrify America network, okay? A lot of people wonder, where do you charge the car? You wonder, where do you charge the car? Because you never have to charge your car. You put gasoline in it. Well, this is the network. It's actually very extensive. You can see a bit of a vacuum in the Dakotas, Montana, Wyoming. We can speculate about why those areas don't have many electric chargers, but we don't need to go there. If you look at the map, I call it the strings of pearls, okay? There are 4 or 5 clear routes, 4 or 5 clear options for crossing the country from west to east or east to west. It's a little harder to go north-south, but there are other options also. What I'm showing you here is just Electrify America. If we look at the map of Massachusetts, southern New England, this map shows the faster chargers in that yellow color, that ochre color, and then the green dots are what are called level 2 chargers. So we'll get into that in a little more detail in a minute. Level 2 chargers are the kind we have here in the library parking lot, the town hall parking lot. As you can see, the options for charging are far from zero. All right, people worry that there's no place to charge. That's just not true. There's lots of places to charge. So if you're going long distances, you want to focus on the faster chargers, which are the yellow ones here. But if you just need to top up for a few miles, you have a couple hours, you want to put 30 miles on the battery, there's all of these green dots. Now, in Barnstable County, there's only green dots so far. But it's my understanding that Electrify America will put in a fast charging station at the Cape Cod Mall coming soon. Maybe this year. So, we left Cape Cod. It was early December, the 2nd or the 3rd. We drove as far as Chicopee, and we charged up there. Big surprise for me, it was full. There were 4 chargers. They were all occupied, although one was occupied by a technician who was working on it. So we actually had to wait there about 15 minutes before we could start to charge the car. Typically, it takes about 30 minutes to charge the car. We went to upstate New York. We visited Elaine's uncle. We visited my sister and her husband. Like I said, friends and family. We did a little shopping. We like to stop at this German deli kind of place in the Catskills. We went to Kingston, New York, where well, Elaine is originally from Kingston. I lived there for a short time when I was in high school. They have these really cool stone houses that were built by the Dutch in the 17th century. The one in the bigger picture was actually recently bought by some friends of ours, and they learned that Harriet Tubman lived there for a while. Harriet Tubman or Sojourner Truth? I might be getting the stories mixed up. I'm sorry, but one of them lived in this house, and they're going to put a plaque on it. Also, Elaine really likes Texas hot wieners. That's the thing. So it's a road trip. We had a snack box in the car. New York State, we bought apples. We stopped in Nyack, New York, which had a view of the Hudson and the, what do they call it now? The Mario Cuomo Bridge. It's not the Tappan Zee Bridge anymore, right? It's the new bridge. So more road trip pictures. Inside the car, it really is just, there's an iPad on the dashboard. And there's a little dashboard next to the steering wheel, a little LED screen. In the lower right, you see a typical, we're charging up at a Walmart. Most of the chargers are at Walmarts. We went to Raleigh, North Carolina. This is Elaine pointing on the map. My mom, it was just before Christmas. We're visiting Mom in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is our road trip. We crossed into Georgia, where they sell funny things. Moonshine, various flavors. This is my sister's house in Gainesville, Georgia. Really nice rural area where the Atlanta Olympics were actually held. They were in Gainesville, they weren't in Atlanta. The landscape around there. I'm going to just rush through. I mean, this is like somebody else's vacation, okay? I'm not sure if you came to see these slides of the road trip or if you came to hear about electric cars, but both. Okay, so I hope you don't mind if I'm kind of going through the slides a little quickly. We visited a waterfall in Georgia. I don't even remember the name, but it was a pretty place. We had a good time. That was my sister too, by the way. And another family picture. My sister Sheila, her husband, her kids, their girlfriends, that kind of thing. And this is their house. It was so beautiful. And it was it was a foggy morning. And my sister was very touched because actually Georgia is so far away. Nobody's ever gone to visit her there. The rest of the family is like, you come to us, okay? My sister Sheila was thrilled. So here's a map. So this is where we took the right turn. We had gone down the East Coast. We took a right turn, started heading west. Destination Tupelo, Mississippi. We've crossed through Alabama. We're getting into Mississippi. Tupelo was the birthplace of Elvis, and they're not going to let you forget it. In fact, they really want you to know that Elvis was born there. It's kind of an obsession with them. But it's also the county seat. I don't remember the name of the county, sorry. Their county courthouse is more impressive than our county courthouse, so we can't sneeze. They have these really interesting houses that are actually now all lawyers' offices in front of the courthouse. Great architecture for lawyers. They also have barbecue. Barbecue in Mississippi was really good. So the next day, we drove from Tupelo through Memphis to Texarkana. And Texarkana is both Arkansas and Texas. It's like the river divides the city in half, hence the name. So entering Tennessee, don't barrel through work zones. We thought that was cute. I bet you didn't know that Memphis was a stronghold of the Union Army. It's really interesting. We're not going to get into politics here, but the way our country is divided and the fight over mind share. It has a lot of interesting manifestations. And I think this sign, which was in the Memphis sort of tourist office on the highway, is an expression of that. Another was here in Memphis in the Cotton Exchange. Okay, Cotton Exchange is about as interesting as a stock exchange, which, you know, some people are really interested, some people are not. It's a place of business. They want to convince you that the Cotton Exchange was the birthplace of the blues. Now, I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but it made for an interesting exhibit inside the Cotton Exchange that they talked about how the cotton economy established the environment in which the blues could arise. I think it's a bunch of white-collar guys taking credit for a lot of blue-collar culture, but it was, and then this is just weird. But that's America, right? What do you do with your cotton? Okay. And we crossed into Arkansas, and we're charging some more. So now we'll get to the other talk that's like intermixed here. How far can the car go on a single charge? What is the range? It goes far enough. Stop worrying about it. This car goes about 250 miles, okay? The range of most electric vehicles, consumer electric vehicles that are available right now, I think the low end is about 100. 100 is, the Mini Cooper is available. 100 is a little bit short. But I think if you get to 200, you really don't need more than that. And anybody who talks about electric vehicles, the first thing, if they've learned anything, they learn about range anxiety, which, I've read studies that say Americans want the electric vehicle to have 800 miles of range before they'll consider buying one. I want to know why. Why do you need 800 miles? Or why do you think you need 800 miles? And I'm not talking about anybody here in particular, but why is that expectation even out there? When talking about range, it's important to remember that even though the full range of the car is 250 miles, the recommendation is that you only charge it to 80%. So that means 200 miles. And I think that's ample. On this whole road trip, I would like to drive 2 to 3 hours and take a break. Now, that's 100 or 150 miles. And the way we structured this whole trip was just to find a charger down the road that was 100 or 150 miles away. Drive that 2 or 3 hours, plug the car in, go use the restroom, get a snack. Your 30 minutes is up. It's time to get back in the car. Eat the snack in the car, typically, right? Or even a meal. The car has 250 miles of range. As a practical matter, it has 200 because of the 80% guideline. That's actually more than sufficient. And that's one point I really want to drive home to everybody today, that any expectation that you need to have 800 miles before you'll even think about buying one, well, we should rethink that assumption. In talking about range, you have to remember that it's negatively affected by a lot of things. And we ran into that on this trip, okay? If you drive at highway speeds, your range is going to be less. If you're worried about range, slow down. For most of the trip, I kept to 65 miles an hour, even if the speed limit was, what do we see? We saw 75 for sure. There might have been places where it was 80. I would still drive 65. And it's okay. Nobody hit us in the rear. Let's put it that way, okay? They watch out for you. You can do it. You're allowed. So highway speeds, low temperatures, and that means below 45, it's going to affect your range. Going uphill. We found that when we were in Joshua Tree. We gained a lot of elevation. The range like disappeared. But then from the highest point in Joshua Tree, we drove home 90 miles. I think the car indicated the range was 90 miles all the way, the whole 90 miles. the way electric vehicles behave is actually not that different from gasoline cars because we're obeying the same laws of physics, but we think about it in a different way. I think, all right, all cars are less efficient at high speeds than they are at low speeds. Electric vehicles are a little bit different because they can regenerate battery capacity in braking. But for some reason, we don't think as hard about how far can I go on a tank of gas as we think about how far can I go on a battery. But really it boils down to the same thing. It's you consume energy to make the car go. And it's a question of how fast are you consuming that energy. So, where are we now? Texarkana to Abilene. And, oh, it is a proper screenshot. Okay, there's the start and end. This is our trek across Texas, which, you know, it was a pandemic. And so we were limiting our social interaction. And in that sense, the trip was a little bit superficial. We were not stopping and talking to a lot of people. We were not just shooting the breeze or getting to know people. We picked up information from the internet, from written sources like that sign about Memphis. We kept our distance from people, but we have some road shots from the highway. Anything that's taken from a moving car was not me. I didn't photograph this. My wife Elaine did, and she said she was going to be here, but I don't know. Texas. Remember when all their electric power got cut off like a year and 2 months ago, whatever it was? We think of Texas as, you know, different from us, but actually Texas had huge wind farms and huge solar farms. So the image of Texas that we get and the reality we experience, there is a bit of a disconnect there, a little bit of cognitive dissonance. Also, Texas is bluer than they act sometimes, at least some counties. You know, it was funny. It's different. You travel to expand your horizons, and we did that, including Walmart. There is a Walmart in Falmouth. I don't think I've ever been inside. Might be the only Walmart in Barnstable County. But we visited 2 or 3 Walmarts a day for a week. And my wife has a whole new wardrobe. a lot of $10 sweatpants, right? And that's because, for whatever reason, a lot of the Electrify America charging stations are located at Walmarts or Targets. I don't know why. There's probably an interesting story there. I understand you can also camp overnight in Walmart parking lots. So it has to do with them, the way they've chosen to utilize the real estate they have available to them. I'm sure Electrify America pays them a nice rent for the use of the space. It's a business deal. So, why do I think you should drive an electric car? You're going to save money. And you're going to help save the planet. Now, both of these might be slightly contentious statements. The save money part of it gets really complicated. And I think there's a lot of disinformation from the oil and gas industry or from the motor vehicle industry that wants to convince you that an electric vehicle costs just as much or more than a gasoline car to operate. It's a complicated discussion, more than I want to deal with here, and I'm not just fobbing it off. It depends on a lot of things. How much does gas cost? How much does electricity cost? How much of the cost of owning and operating a motor vehicle do you want to include in your consideration? I'm persuaded, I'm convinced that electric vehicles are actually cheaper to own and operate, even if the initial cost of the vehicle itself is higher. But that too, we are in kind of a sweet spot right now. I purchased my car. The manufacturer's suggested retail price was $45,000, which is more than I've ever spent on a car in my life. but I got $10,000 in tax breaks for doing it. So it's essentially a $35,000 car. And as I mentioned, I have 3 years of free charging. But even if I were paying to recharge the vehicle, I have graphs I can show you that the cost of adding 100 miles of range, gasoline versus electric, has been consistently cheaper with electricity than with gasoline. And now with what's happened to gas prices lately, and I don't think they're going to turn around anytime soon, the gap is widening. So gasoline cars are getting more expensive to operate, whereas the cost of operating an electric vehicle is remaining fairly steady. It's climbing, but much more slowly than the cost of gasoline. Insurance. I think my insurance went up a little bit when I got this car, but that's because I'm insuring a new car as opposed to insuring my 13-year-old Subaru. That was cheap. So, like I say, there's a lot of factors involved here, and that's why I'm kind of simplifying and jumping over that discussion. That may not satisfy everybody here. I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy who owns a car, and I like my car, and I want to tell you about it. So, we'll keep going. We went from Abilene, Texas, to Marfa, Texas. Now, Marfa, as you can see, is way in the southern part of West Texas. Why did we go there? We passed a lot of cotton, this really barren landscape, more barren landscape, and we got to Marfa, which was actually really beautiful. Marfa is where the film Giant was made. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen Giant or you remember Giant, but it had Rock Hudson, Elizabeth Taylor, and James Dean, fabulous cast, and this crazy uncle character who was playing Claire de Lune in the lobby of this big house throughout the whole movie. It's 1956, a great year. And we started to watch it last night, as a matter of fact. Anyway, Marfa, Texas is not going to let you forget that that's where this movie was made. This is the lobby of the Hotel Paisano, which is also in the film. But we went to Marfa because in the 70s, a New York sculptor by the name of Donald Judd moved there because it was the site of an abandoned Air Force base, and he could get an airplane hangar for about $15, I think. I don't know. I'm exaggerating a little bit. He got real estate for very cheap, transformed the town into essentially an outpost of Soho in Manhattan. But unfortunately for us, it was a Monday when we got there, and Soho is just not open on Mondays. So we really weren't able to see any of the art kind of stuff that we wanted to see. This is Marfa Burrito, which makes a great breakfast burrito for, I think it was $5. There was this weird weather balloon in Marfa. Anyway, we went there thinking we could see art that we were not able to see. So stuff like that happens on a road trip. We went from there to Las Cruces, New Mexico. And by the way, we're traveling kind of basically 400 miles a day, an 8-hour drive. And when I think back on it, and I think we're going to do this again next year, we could have planned it better. We want to plan to spend 2 nights in more places so that we have a full day to explore in between. This is Van Horn, Texas, famous for, what is it called? Blue Horizons. Jeff Bezos' space exploration company is located there. There's nothing. A lot of driving. New Mexico. Here we are in Las Cruces, home of the world's largest chili pepper. But the reason we stopped in Las Cruces was to see White Sands National Park. Now, I'm going to show you too many pictures of White Sands National Park because it was an incredible place. It's a gypsum desert. So the sand is literally white and very fine. It's the largest gypsum desert, I think, in the world, if I'm not mistaken. Elaine described it as like Provincetown, but with rattlesnakes. We didn't actually see any rattlesnakes, but we were warned that they were there. It was just an amazingly beautiful place, and I really want to go back. Another really extraordinary thing about White Sands, because it's gypsum, gypsum preserves footprints in an extraordinary way. So the oldest footprints in North America, 20,000 years old, have been found there. And that is upending the world of archaeology and the whole theory of how Native Americans arrived on this continent and when. There's the, what do they call it? The Bering Strait, the Bering Bridge theory dates the arrival of indigenous people to 10,000, 12,000 years ago, in that range. If you have footprints that are 20 or 25,000 years old, it sort of says, well, I think we better rethink this, right? Beautiful place. If you ever have a chance, I recommend that you go there. On this trip, as I said, we were moving kind of quickly, not giving ourselves a whole lot of time to explore, but this is one place where we spent at least a morning, maybe 4 or 5 hours. It was a great visit. Sorry if I'm scrolling through this too quickly, but you get the idea. I probably included too many slides of this. The desert vegetation is also really great, and the sky was really beautiful that day. There's Elaine. There's Elaine again. A beautiful tree. They have trees, not many. Okay, we'll stop this soon. From Las Cruces, we drove to Tucson, and this is just more southern desert. Broad expanses punctuated by really weird-looking mountains. Another charging station. This one was not at a Walmart. This was Love's, one of the truck stop kind of places. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the kinds of chargers there are in the world. I don't want to make this too technical a talk, but we'll keep this pretty basic. We talk about 3 kinds. There's level 1 charging. That's using your regular household current. I did this for the first 6 weeks that I owned the car, okay? Household current adds about 3 miles of range per hour of charging, okay? If your battery holds 250 miles and you want to charge it from 0, it's going to take you a long time. But most people don't drive 250 miles in a day. On an average day, the average American drives 40 miles. So, what did I say here? You can use your regular household current and charge your car on an average day, just overnight. You plug it in when you get home, it's ready in the morning, it's all filled up. And I did that for 6 weeks. And it was fine. If you have a dryer in your house, you probably have a 240 volt line. And you have a couple of breakers on your board that handle 240 volts. I had someone install, I had an electrician install a level 2 charger in my garage. That adds about 30 miles of range per hour of charging. So, even if you drain it to 0, you're talking about roughly 8 hours to fully charge the battery. And you will not drain it to 0. That's not going to happen. You never drive your gasoline car, you don't empty the gas tank. You never drive your electric car to 0. So it will always take less than 8 hours with a level 2 charger. And you know what's a great thing about electric cars? I don't have a gas pump in my garage, but I have electricity. So every night you drive it home, you plug it in, it's always full in the morning. You really never have to worry about charging. Level 3 are the DC fast chargers that you use on a road trip. They can charge the car from 5% to 80% in 38 minutes. Or that's what Volkswagen says. The truth is, the speed varies, all right? And we're going to quickly get over my head in terms of electricity. The DC fast chargers come in a couple of different speeds themselves. And then the stated speed is always the maximum speed. And it's not always delivering maximum speed. So there's a lot of variables here. The simple summary is for me to say, it usually took me 30 minutes to charge the car. And, you know, did it ever take 20? Well, only if I hadn't drained it very far. Did it ever take an hour? Sure, sometimes it did. But it's always in that range, between 20 minutes and an hour, average of 30. The reason they recommend only charging to 80% is that charging to 100 will degrade the battery faster over the length of the life of the battery, but also that last 20%, it slows down a lot, okay? It charges more slowly. So on a road trip, there's no advantage to charging that last 20%. Just charge to 80, drive down the road, charge again. So you'll be charging more frequently, but you'll be charging more quickly. And that was an important lesson that I learned on this road trip. Just keep charging. There's no drawback, there's no disadvantage. You're going to take a break anyway. Plug the car in. So we're driving some more. We get into Arizona. More Arizona. A lot of interesting road signs. The one I wanted to catch was dust storms exist. And, you know, I understand what they're trying to say. Did that go backwards? Ooh, why? All right, we're charging again. We're in Tucson. They have saguaro cactuses there. They're very distinctive, the tall ones. Saguaro National Park is there. We stopped in Tucson. We have friends there, but also it was a Wednesday, and I had Assembly of Delegates meeting, which I attended via Zoom from the quiet of my friend's house with the good Wi-Fi and all that stuff. So we planned the trip around that too. And we kept going. We got into California. California looks like this. We got to Palm Desert, which is where my wife's sister lives. And we actually stayed there for like 4 weeks. We had a great time. The weather was a little crummy when we got there, but it was improving. So originally we were going to stay 3 weeks. We just stayed 4. As you can see, we've added 4,000 miles to the car. And I don't know if you've ever been to Palm Desert, Palm Springs, Coachella Valley area. This is what it looks like. Our daughter came from Tokyo to meet us there. Palm Desert looks great. We did a lot of hiking. This is basically just out the backyard from my sister-in-law's. There are snow-covered mountains all around. Interesting desert vegetation, cholla cactuses. Hiking with my daughter, more cactus, more cactus, more cactus, more palm trees, cactus. I love this stuff. We had a great time. My son and his girlfriend also came from Connecticut. There are palm trees in these incredible canyons that go up into the mountains. These are barrel cacti and palm trees and little caves and jamba juice. My wife had a birthday when we were in Palm Desert, so this is our birthday brunch. It was so beautiful just being there in Palm Desert, and the cacti have these weird fruits or flowers. In Palm Springs, there's this fabulous statue of Marilyn Monroe. It's also kind of a global center for mid-century modern design, so this was a show in the art museum there. There are pink poodles in Palm Springs. In the middle of the Coachella Valley. Coachella Valley is kind of where the San Andreas Fault runs right through from Los Angeles down to the Mexico border. And there are cracks in the rock, and water can come up from subterranean, and that's where you have an oasis where palm trees can grow. Anyway, it makes for some really fabulous landscape. This is the Coachella Valley Preserve. I think we went there 3 times in 3 weeks. It was just a great area to hike in. They don't want you swimming in the oasis. These are the snow-covered mountains all around. We went into Joshua Tree National Park, which is also a fabulous area. As they say, come for the trees, stay for the rocks. These are Joshua trees. I think Joshua Tree National Park is the only place where they grow. I think their range is really not outside the park at all. The rocks are incredible, lots of rock climbers. We were lucky to see Bighorn sheep, which maybe you can find them in this picture. I think there's a half dozen. Okay. We were lucky, just by chance, we happened to be in this particular area, which is called Dead Indian Canyon, on the last day when we could legally be there. It's only open for 3 months of the year to protect the bighorn sheep. Up the backside of Palm Desert, there's a road that goes up into the San Jacinto State Preserve. It was a really beautiful drive. Sunsets. This is in a place called Whitewater Preserve. Again, I like to get out and do a bunch of hiking. And we went into Tahquitz Canyon, which is on the Indian reservation, the Agua Caliente branch of the Cahuilla tribe. We had a guide. There was a beautiful waterfall that was used as a set in Frank Capra's film of Lost Horizons. It was a gorgeous waterfall. I also took there's a tramway in Palm Springs that goes up the mountain. It goes up 5,000 feet in about 20 minutes, and with beautiful views of the Coachella Valley. When we packed up the car to head back home, you can see it holds a lot of stuff. And America is a strange and wonderful place. This was called the Sunny Side Up Cafe back in Tucson. We were a little apprehensive because the Corona map looked like this as we were heading back. So we just kept our distance from people, right? This is back in Texas, Austin, Texas. O. Henry lived there. So this is O. Henry's house in Austin. It's another house in Austin. And we arrived back in New England for that big snowfall on the last day of January. And we're back, and with 10,000 miles more on the car than we started out with. So that's the end of what I had prepared for you. And I've already talked too much, but I'm sure you have questions.
Was that the picture of the dashboard?
That was a picture of the dashboard, yes.
Because that's an interesting, because that's the thing, when I first saw the dashboard in your car, I was like, whoa, it's too simple.
Yep.
Now a whole bunch of stuff.
It's an LED. So this is not what it looks like all the time. It changes. Or if I were driving, it would show my speed. It also has a little graph. Okay, my car has about as much autonomous driving as I ever want to have. And that means it has 2 features. It has lane assist to keep you in the center of the lane, or to help keep you in the center of the lane. And it has cruise control. They call it ACC. It's not advanced. It's essentially enhanced cruise control. If you set it at 65 miles an hour and there's a vehicle in front of you that's going slower, the car slows automatically. It does not keep going 65. And it will bring you to a full stop if necessary. I use that cruise control a lot. I've used it extensively, and I trust it. to bring the car to a full stop and not crash into the car in front of me. It will brake more aggressively than I will. It might wait a little longer than I would, but then it starts braking really aggressively. And of course, as you brake, you regenerate battery capacity. So, yes, Kathy?
What kind of routine maintenance does an electric vehicle require as opposed to a gas-powered vehicle? I mean, is there oil in the engine? I mean, how
There is no engine, there's a motor, so there is no oil, there's almost no moving parts, and certainly no user-accessible moving parts. And even, okay, I'm dealing with the Volkswagen dealer in Hyannis. I think only one of their technicians is fully trained on how to maintain, repair this vehicle. I've had the car in 3 times. They were all essentially scheduled inspections. As far as I can tell, there was not really much to do. They put in washer fluid. I asked them to replace the wipers. There was a piece of cladding on the bottom of the car that I noticed was hanging. And I took that in, and that had to be repaired. That was probably the result of running over something that struck the bottom. And there was plastic cladding that protected the battery. And you think, oh, they had to replace a piece of plastic. It was $500, okay? So, you know, I wasn't happy about that, but no oil changes.
5,000-mile visits into the...
So there was a first visit, I think after 3 weeks, I had a 10,000-mile check, I had a 20,000-mile check, but I don't think they did much besides plug it into a diagnostic computer and get back no codes.
And the batteries, physically, do they ever have to be replaced at some point? Do they have a lifespan themselves? Although it may be too soon to ask that, obviously, for your car. But
So they have a lifespan.
yeah.
I don't think we really know yet what that lifespan is. I know that Volkswagen warranties this battery for, I believe it's 8 years or 80,000 miles. Now, I will go through more than 80,000 miles in 8 years. So we'll see how that actually plays out. But I guess I am an early adopter, and we don't know yet all the answers to questions like that. But we'll see.
What's the cost of a battery replacement?
I'm not sure a battery can be replaced. And we'll see about that too. The way this car is built, the battery is essentially the chassis. So it would mean rebuilding the whole car. And basically, I think of this as a 10-year purchase, is my answer to your question. Volkswagen has promised they will recycle this battery. And when you think about it, a battery is just a bunch of heavy metals. And the metals themselves don't degrade. It should be a fully recyclable object. But basically, I'm thinking of this car as having a 10-year life. Tim?
You mentioned that if you charge the car all the way to 100%, you actually degrade the battery some. I'm talking about the kind of doing it. If you're getting 30 miles an hour charging it at home overnight, is there a problem with overcharging it? Does it cut itself off at a particular time?
There's not a problem with overcharging. So on the panel, on the iPad, there's a charging control screen, and I set it to charge to 80%. And I can set it to any value in 10% increments. And charging to 100% is okay, but you shouldn't be doing it all the time. And they also recommend that if you charge it to 100%, you should then start driving as soon as possible. They don't want it to stay at 100%. So my routine is to charge it to 80.
So there is a setting you can do. You don't have to wake up at 4 in the morning.
That's correct. Yes. Okay, I saw lots of hands. I would worry about that if I were using the fast charge a lot. But basically, 95% of the time, I'm not on a road trip. I'm charging with AC at home. I only use the DC fast chargers when I am on a road trip. So that may be a concern, although I have to read more about that. But I'm not too worried about it because I'm not overusing it. Yes?
Your thoughts on the cars that are the combos now, and I'm not sure what they're called. They're electric and they're also.
So,
Well, they're hybrids and they're.
Plug-in hybrids.
they're
Yeah, they're plug-in.
plug-in hybrids, yes.
What is your thought on those? Because some people are getting those because they don't, I guess they don't trust.
That's what I think. I think people are liking those because they don't trust the fully electric. And I don't fully understand, well, like I said before, the lack of trust or the anxiety or the skepticism that people feel about electric vehicles is, in my mind, based on lack of familiarity. And that's all. And that if you inform yourself, there's no reason not to go to a fully electric vehicle. Personally, I'm happy never have to pump gas again. And if it makes you feel better to get a plug-in hybrid or a Prius, well, that makes you feel better. I don't understand it. Yes?
So if I drove your car at 80 miles an hour, how far would I go?
If you drove my car at 80 miles an hour. So I didn't do that, so I can't really give you an answer. And I just want to say okay, if you charge to 80% and you drive at 80 miles an hour, I'm going to estimate instead of 200, you would go 150. But it wouldn't be 100. It would be more like 150. It's probably even a little more than that. But that's a guess. Yes?
You used Electrify America on your trip. Can any electric vehicle use any charger? So could I have a Honda electric vehicle and use an Electrify America, or do I have to go to a special?
Okay.
For instance,
A Honda, yes. A Tesla, no. And
all those Tesla ones down at the Dunkin' Donuts in Sagamore are only for Tesla.
that's right. And my understanding of the story is this. Elon Musk was a pioneer of electric vehicles. And I think early on, and I'm going to just make up a number and say around 2005, Elon Musk went to the big three automakers and said, electric vehicles are the future. Let's agree on a standard. And they laughed him out of the room. And he said, screw you guys, I'm going to make my own. And then when they came back to him and said, let's make a standard, he said, screw you guys, do whatever you want, but you can't have mine. And that's the story. So there is an adapter that I can get to use a Tesla charger, but I cannot use a Tesla fast charger. I can only use the level 2 Tesla charger. And that adapter is, I think, $150 or $200 piece of equipment that I would use rarely. And so I haven't done that. Now, I have seen Teslas use Electrify America, but they also need adapters to do that. Also, the Tesla network is more fully developed than the other, okay? But there has emerged a standard. It's called CCS. Almost every vehicle is using that except Tesla. The other exception was Nissan, where the older Nissans had their own thing also, because Nissan also was a real pioneer in this technology. Anyway, there is a coalescing around a new standard, and there are adapters available for people to use the other things, but mostly people stick to their own. Next question. Carl, did you have one? Yeah.
So you had to get it repaired at the dealership.
Yes.
Presumably they're the only ones who, if you're in the middle of, the desert in Texas, and
Yeah.
it has to get towed, it has to go to a dealer, you can't take it to a local mechanic, right? Are you worried about that?
Pretty much. I'm not too worried about it. I do get 3 years of towing also. In other words, Volkswagen will send a tow truck anywhere in the 48 states, or maybe the 50 states. It might not get there in an hour. I understand that. But I also think this is a relatively rare circumstance. I'm no more worried about that than I am worried about the fact that there's no spare tire in the car. But that's pretty standard with a lot of new cars, not just electrics. They give you a can of goop and a can of CO2. And if you get a flat, it's fix it yourself time and limp to the nearest mechanic. So yeah, it's a little bit of a risk, a little bit of exposure, but I think the probabilities are low enough that I'm comfortable. Yes?
If you charge at home, is there any interaction with solar panels? Do you have them on your house?
So I have solar panels on my house,
Yeah.
and I think I would need a PhD to figure out my electric bill. So I don't get too obsessed with how much is this actually costing me. I think it has not raised my electric bill significantly. That's the best answer I can give you.
And what is the source of the energy that supplies the electricity to the charging station?
What is the choice of the energy?
No, the origin.
The origin of the electricity. So the United States has a mix of sources of electric power, and we still get some nuclear, and we have some thermoelectric, and we have some hydropower.
No fossil fuels?
I didn't say no fossil fuels. So thermoelectric includes fossil fuels, and yes, fossil fuels are part of our electricity mix. I don't know the percentage right now. Some people in this room might know that percentage off the top of their heads. But it's less than 100, whereas a gasoline car is 100% fossil fuel. And the mix is improving. So yes, we need to improve the mix further, but we're already better than gasoline cars. Yes?
I know that if you use EVgo, that they're 100% carbon neutral.
Is that okay? And that's a wonderful pledge that EVgo has made. Yes.
More expensive, but it is carbon neutral.
Uh-huh. So that too means that they are using some fossil fuels, but they are offsetting. Yeah.
So
Yes.
is there one general app that you have that shows all the charging stations out there, so where you know to go
So
charge?
there are probably several apps that would claim to be sufficient and all you need, but that doesn't mean I rely on only one. Primarily, I use the Electrify America app because I get that for free, but I know that Electrify America is not available everywhere, and so there is an app called PlugShare that I think comes closer to fully showing everything available, but there's also a US government app that I think is called the Alternative Fuels Center. And they're doing a wonderful job of compiling and making that available on an app also. Altogether, I'll tell you, on my phone, I have a little folder that has probably 8 apps in it. And I look at them all for one reason or another. Yes, Debbie?
So if you did not have the 3 years of service that came with your car, do you, on a charge, like on the road like that, approximately what would that cost you? You'd be putting in a credit card, right?
It's a credit card, or you use an app that has your credit card already on file. And I think it's a third to a half of what gasoline costs. But that's a guesstimate, and it changes. Yes, in the back.
When you go for your state inspection sticker, can you go to any station or do you have to go somewhere special?
Any station. I did it yesterday. The guy was a little bit flummoxed. He says, what do I have? There's nothing here for me to inspect except do your directional lights work?
And your tires?
And in fact, he was especially flustered because this car, you don't turn it on and off with a key. You just sit in the driver's seat, it's on. You get out, it's off. So he couldn't look at the lights and be in the driver's seat at the same time. I actually had to go sit in the car so that he could check the lights. I saw more hands. Kathy, you asked one already. I think there were other people who haven't asked. Yes, sir.
We saw the notice in the paper for this lecture. I mean, and you've done a marvelous job of talking about the electric vehicle, the use of the electric vehicle. 3 days ago, we returned from a round trip from Dennis to California, Palm Desert, in our Tesla.
Okay.
Okay, so the experiences are identical.
There you go.
Except
When
we bought our Tesla, they had a deal where we have lifetime free charging. So our trip to California, he said, this is not going to cost us anything except for hotel rooms and food. And we did a pretty good job of eating, but the interesting thing about electric vehicles, your railroad engines, those are electric. They have a diesel engine that they use to generate electricity to pull those 100-some car trains from a dead stop up to 100 miles an hour, and that's the use of electric power. And they have like 2 engines pulling a train that big, and you can calculate how many tons that is. So the power of electric motors is, the electric motor in our car is only that big. But I've got 2 of them. I got one in front and one in the back. You probably have 2 also.
Actually, no, I have just rear-wheel drive. So the all-wheel drive is available now, but it was not a year ago when I made my purchase. But that's really interesting about the diesel engines powering the electric motor on the trains. I was not aware of that.
That's exactly right.
Uh-huh.
And I used to live in a town in the suburb of Chicago where they made those engines.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a marvelous thing.
Okay, and I have a little bit of envy of your lifetime free electricity on the Tesla. But again, that's part of Elon Musk's personality. Anyway, good deal. Well done. Thank you. Other questions? Yes?
You mentioned the cost of it versus gas car, but you also had a bullet point on the environment too, which we kind of know that, you know, it's a dumb idea to have everybody have a gas engine that's driving around. So what is the comparison between running an electric car versus a gas car as far as environmental impact?
So the car manufacturers are proud and point out, no tailpipe emissions from the electric car. This is true as far as it goes. And the truth is that the environmental impact of the electric vehicle is a function of the environmental impact of the electricity network. So how are we generating electricity? And I would say that, well, the mix has improved greatly over the last 50 years and will continue to improve. But it's also true that electric vehicles are more efficient at using the energy they consume than gasoline vehicles are. And so even if electric power generation in the United States were 100% fossil fuel, electric vehicles would still be better for the environment than gasoline-powered vehicles. But still, we got to do more work to do better. Other questions? Really?
Okay, we'll answer the question then, or bring up the question.
Go ahead, ask the question. Everybody else here doesn't know it.
Okay. The question I had asked Terry earlier was, the federal highway fund is 85% of it about is based on the gas tax. Right now, the majority of people in this room are paying the gas tax and are funding it, and there's apparently a couple of you that are not. So where, you know, what do you see in the future? The more electric cars there are, the less people there's going to be paying a gas tax, but you're still using the highway. So what's your feeling about at what point is something going to happen? Because if it's true that about 84.9% of the federal highway tax goes to maintaining highways and infrastructure, with the state limit, the state percentage is a whole different thing. But at some point, something's got to happen, because the less gas tax there is, the less money there is to maintain highways.
So, as Karen pointed out, I am the Eastham delegate to the Barnstable County Assembly, which means I'm a legislator. And in this talk, I've been speaking entirely in my private capacity, but I will answer your question as a legislator. And that is that the pace of government lags behind innovation in technology. So, you're right. We have a gasoline tax. It pays for roads. And legislators have to do something to catch up with the advances in technology to figure out another way to finance road maintenance and construction. That will happen, but I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. I think it should happen. It absolutely should happen. I'm aware that in some states, it costs more to register an electric vehicle than a gasoline-powered vehicle, and that's how they're dealing with it. I don't think Massachusetts is doing that yet, but I have to renew my registration before the end of the month, so I'm going to find out.
The association you belong to, the New England EV
Yeah.
Association, do they put out regular, email blasts or anything? Do you know where they stand on those kind of future issues that are going to come to all of us?
You know, I have signed up with that, but I haven't had a whole lot of interaction with them yet. There will be an in-person event. I forget if it's later in April or in May. So I hope to go to one of those gatherings and learn more. But I guess that means I haven't gotten a newsletter, or it went straight to my spam filter. I'm not sure. Tim.
When you were planning your trip around Walmarts and charging stations, were you ever worried about there not being enough charging stations when you got there, or them being charged? I mean, the library here has four stations. I mean, and I noticed yours was the only car that was currently charged.
Yes.
But was that an issue apart from that one time that you mentioned?
So this is an interesting thing. Bill McKibben wrote something in the New Yorker a couple of months ago talking about how we really need to build up our electric charger network. And his article made me so angry that I wrote a letter to the New Yorker. I mean, he was talking about how we're underserved. But if you look at the number of gas stations and the number of electric vehicle charging stations in this country, I think there's about a third as many electric charging stations as gas stations. But when you think about the fact that there's only about 2% of the vehicles on the road are electric, in that sense, electric vehicles are overserved. Now, people are building for a future where more cars will be electric. But right now, typically, if I drive to Stratford, Connecticut to the Electrify America, there's 10 charging dispensers. They call them dispensers. But maybe only 3 of them are working. Okay? So my biggest complaint with the charging stations is that they are under-maintained. Not that there's not enough of them, but it's a reflection of the actual use they're getting. It's not worth it to the operator to keep them all fully functional. So there's a little bit of a Potemkin Village feeling about it right now, that you go and it's like, wait a minute, only 3 of these are working. And it might take a few minutes of frustration to figure out which ones they are. Only once, okay, we stayed in the hotel in Tupelo and it had a charger. And we got there at 6 p.m. and there was only one charger and somebody was plugged in. And when he was finished charging, he didn't come unplug. So it was 6 a.m. before I could plug into that charger, and that put us a few hours behind schedule. But if that was the worst of my problems, that's not really such a terrible problem to have. Yes, Karen?
If somebody comes in the library and they do, and says, oh, you have those out there, you know, they ask questions that I can't answer, who can I direct them to? I don't want to keep bothering you for it, you know.
Oh, sure you do. Who can you direct them to? Well, what kind of problem?
Well, what, you know, don't these things use fossil fuels, you know, the question that they're asking, I guess, like,
For general information kind of questions? In that case, you put your librarian hat on. And, you know, I'm a librarian, I can find the answer to anything, right?
yeah, don't send.
I mean, general questions about them as far as how they're funded, grant, and all of that stuff. Send them to Rich at Town Hall, because he oversees the solar program and, you know, and those, he's the one who got them through that grant. So, have him call Town Hall and ask for Rich.
Yes, Tim?
With your panoply of apps, are there apps like, I mean, Waze, for example, will tell you where somebody will put down where the police are scouting and that kind of thing, or like a route. Are there apps that show which, where people are telling you which pumps, which stations are not working, or that kind of thing? Or
So one of these apps is called PlugShare, and it has the opportunity for you to leave notes for other users to read. And those notes do boil down to only 2 of the 10 chargers here were working. But also the Electrify America app itself has information in real time. It'll say available or unavailable, so that it'll tell you if it's actually in use or not, as well as if it's not currently functioning. So that information is there on the Electrify America app. There's also one that a lot of people seem to use that's called a Better Route Planner, that you can input your state of charge at the beginning of your trip and your end destination, and it will mark out for you where you should charge and how much you should charge. Apparently there are people in the world who plan to the extent that, you know, I only need 45% state of charge to get to the next charger, therefore I'm only going to charge to 45%. I'm not that obsessive. I charge to 80. It only takes 30 minutes anyway. Kathy.
General comment, I heard recently some automotive analysts saying that Toyota could be in deep trouble because they have sunk too much into the hybrid technology, and that is just a way station, that the electric vehicle is definitely going to be the future of automotive engineering, and that Toyota's going to be behind if it doesn't quickly change course.
So I will agree with the idea that hybrids are a intermediate technology on the way to fully electric technology. I'm not going to weigh in on whether Toyota is in danger or not. Different businesses, they assess risk in different ways, and they view the future in different ways, and they formulate a strategy around that. Toyota, if I'm not mistaken, is still the world's largest automaker, or maybe it's been overtaken by Volkswagen, I'm not sure. They got there for a reason. It's a very mainstream, middle-of-the-road reason, but that's a successful business strategy. It might not be the most interesting or innovative or groundbreaking, and it depends on which you value, right? Yes, Carl.
On the issue of the environment, I assume the battery's a lithium battery. Is there
Yes.
any concern that, you know, we're not sucking oil, but now we're mining lithium? And
Yes, this is a concern. And they're thinking of new ways to extract lithium from seawater, from other sources all the time.
you said the battery could be recharged or recycled?
Yes. Yes, I'm confident it will be recycled. I do wish that extraction technologies were better, less harmful. I still compare it to oil and gas and say we're doing better than that. Sorry. Anybody else? This was fun. Thank you very much.